Welcome to The Wealth of Nations. Book 1, Chapter 1, The Division of Labour. Adam Smith was a Scottish economist, philosopher, and a key pioneer of the political economy. At the age of 14, he was admitted to the University of Glasgow to study moral philosophy, during which time he gained a passion for liberty, reason, and the freedom of speech. Born in 1723, he would grow up to watch Britain transform during the Industrial Revolution, and through his work, become a thought leader and spearhead for its progression through society. His magnum opus, The Wealth of Nations, is a treatise on the mechanisms which cause the prosperity of a nation to rise or fall. Based on his previous work on moral philosophy and a thorough understanding of the mind and motivations of human beings, he was able to write a book that lay the foundations of the free market economy, the most successful economic theory ever devised. This is the first part of a series that will cover the book in its entirety, an attempt to make the marvellous theory, written in contemporary 18th century prose, comprehensible for the lay reader. The book begins with an investigation into the various causes of the improvement of the productive powers of labour and the division of that productivity among society. Generally throughout Adam Smith's book, he tends to reason through analogy. So rather than come to a conclusion through theoretical means or saying this is how it should be or this is how I want it to be, he says this is how it is, and then through analogy I can make this point to you. And so he uses the idea of a pin manufacturing industry, of the pin manufacturing industry in the 18th century to show this, to show the division of labour. And so previously, whereas it might have been 2 or 3 people making pins, or maybe even one person by themselves making a pin, during the Industrial Revolution, the pin manufacturing process got split up into 18 different jobs. And they know this because it was very easy to study, because everyone who was working in that industry could be under one roof, because the amount of space it requires to produce pins is not that great. And so they knew it was split up into 18 different jobs, and one man would do each job, or maybe sometimes there would be slightly fewer men and one man would do 1 or 2 jobs, probably slightly related to one another. So you might have someone who cuts the wire, you might have one who draws out the wire, then another one might straighten it, then another one might sharpen it, another one would roughen it up to put the tack on, that sort of thing. And this increases productivity. And you can see this, or he uses an analogy to show this. So he says if you had a single man creating these pins, say an untrained man, he has no access to the tools, he would be lucky if he could produce 20 pins in a single day. You know, he might not even be able to produce 1 pin in a single day. So in that time he spent, in those, say, 8 hours he spent working in a day, he would have produced 1 pin or 20 pins. That would be it. But 10 men who know their craft, who have the tools for the labour, they can produce 48,000 pins a day. So each of them produces 4,800 pins a day per man. So that's a productivity increase of 240 to 4,800, depending on whether you take the upper limit of 20 and the lower limit of 1. Okay, and the increase in productivity is so advantageous to everyone involved in that situation. The person who's obviously in charge, who's set up the manufacturing industry, but also the people doing the manufacturing, because they produce so much more produce, they can get so much more for it. For the amount of time they put in, they get more back for their labour. And because it's so beneficial, the idea of division of labour spreads throughout society. Everywhere it can. And there are a couple of reasons for this. So first of all, the skill of the person is increased, like their dexterity, Adam Smith says, their ability to perform that task. Then you have the time wasted lessened, because this person, maybe one person doing a job of every single job of the pins, he's going to get annoyed at having to switch tasks all the time. Everyone understands this idea, this feeling of dread, the sense of dread you get when you're like, I'm going to have to switch from writing an essay and moving to revision. Like say if you're a student, you're writing your essay and you think, well, I've just about finished with this, and you've got into the swing of it, and then just after that, now you have to go off and maybe you have to do some maths or something like that. And you think to yourself, well, I just did this, I just got in the mood for this, I don't really want to do this right now. So you go and make a cup of tea, you go and make some food, whatever. But if you were just writing that essay for 8 hours, you would feel more comfortable doing that. And this is the sort of thing he's talking about. You decrease that moment, the moment where you sort of dither, the moment where you don't go to what you're supposed to do straight away, or what you feel like you have to do. And even though it's not big, it's still significant. It's like a 10 to 20% productivity increase. So if you're just working at one thing, then you'll have a 10 to 20% productivity increase just by virtue of doing it. And then you also have the final one, which is the most important, which is that as you are working at this one thing, you'll start to think of things that can make it easier. You know, that's why we have spell checkers in essays, for example. Someone was sat there writing and going, God, why do I keep on making spelling mistakes? It's really slowing me down. And when work is worse, I have to read through it again. This is annoying. It's irritating. And so someone developed a spell checker because they were constantly thinking about this. And Adam Smith calls it abridging labour, an abridgment to labour. And the same thing is true in the pin industry, where a man could be drawing out a wire and they might think, you know, there is an easier way to draw this out, which means I don't have to put gloves on and pull it myself. I mean, that may not be what they ever did, but let's just say that is the case. You might think, I could build a machine which attaches onto it and draws this wire out for me. Not only will it be quicker, it will be better. So it will mean there's less time wasted on producing poor quality wires. And it's also quicker, so you get better quality wires at a faster pace. And that's all because this person was sat there constantly thinking about this. So that's probably the biggest productivity increase. You know, in like mills in the industrial era in England, you might have had people using looms or something like that, which is like a way to weave things together, but someone found a way to automate it. And that productivity increase is probably far larger than someone drawing something out with a wire. Probably. It's probably like a productivity increase of like 100 or something like that, something ridiculous. So you can see this abridgment of labour caused by the division of labour massively increases productivity. He uses an example, actually, which is quite an interesting example, of a young child who didn't enjoy working in a fire engine. Basically, it was his job to pull something when he was told to open a valve. And he found that if he attached a piece of string to the thing which indicated to him at the back of the fire engine when he should open that valve, the valve would open by itself. And so he could run off and go play with his friends. And so through wishing to be free and go play with his friends, he found a way to abridge his own labour and improve that machine and make it more efficient, more productive. But in Adam Smith's day, there were limits to this, and there still are limits to the division of labour. So, for example, in agriculture, it's hard to divide the labour in agriculture. Even now, in common agriculture, today, in modern agriculture, you cannot plough fields all day, every day, because there is a particular time in the seasons to plough fields. So you can't have a plougher, because at some point he'll have no work anymore, and he doesn't make enough money ploughing fields in the time that he does to last him the whole year. So he has to do something else on the side. Maybe then he sows, and maybe then he has to tend the crops. He has to walk around looking at them. He has to tend the fields. He has to watch pests, that sort of thing. And because you can't abridge that labour in an obvious way, in Adam Smith's time, it didn't matter how advanced the different countries were. Say, for example, England was more advanced than France in agriculture, and they were both more advanced than Poland. To find corn from any of those countries, good quality corn, or to purchase it, you would have to pay the same amount of money. So even though England is more advanced than France, and they're both more advanced than Poland, because abridgment of labour is not easy to accomplish in agriculture, all those countries could produce food at roughly the same level of efficiency, which meant that the cost of their product was the same. Interestingly, in the Netherlands, this is changing. Now, there's a great National Geographic article on this, and they basically one of the last European countries to ever experience a famine. I think it was during the mid-century Germans' invasion. Essentially, they were focused on the fact that this cannot happen again. Because of this focus, they thought, well, how can we really increase the productivity of farms? How can we decrease water consumption? How can we reduce chemical use? Are there natural ways to fight pests? That sort of thing. And now in the Netherlands, they use greenhouse farming. And this is an abridgment of labour. Because now, if you have natural pest control options, so for example, there's this company in the Netherlands which is focused on this sort of thing, and they essentially farm things which kill aphids. There's like a type of insect that attacks aphids, and they release them into these greenhouses, and they don't want anything but the aphids, and they just go kill the aphids. And so without chemicals, anything, they have this natural way of killing all the aphids and keeping their crops perfect. And that massively improves yields. And they also have drones which fly around and check up on the plants, and in that way they can give the plants the exact amount of water that each of them needs, as opposed to just leaving them out in the rain or spraying them all with whatever average amount they think is right. And so through using these machines, using robots and computers to make these decisions for you, you abridge labour and increase productivity. And because it's in a greenhouse, you can produce all year round. There's no seasons. The greenhouse is the perfect environment to constantly produce. And because you can constantly produce and cycle greenhouses, you can have people working constantly at one job. Someone can always be ploughing, someone can always be sowing, and someone can always be collecting the fruit. And so in that way, you increase efficiency. Because this is a natural phenomena. It's not an economic theory that's been forced on anyone. It's not like the communist theory of, oh, we have to live in this particular way because theoretically I believe that this is the best way we can all live together. It's not that. It's an explanation of something that naturally happens. And it's similar to Einstein's theory of relativity in that both are theories about emergent phenomena. So Einstein's theory is about the emergent phenomena to do with gravity, but Smith's theory is about emergent phenomena of human behaviour. And so his theory is descriptive, not prescriptive. It's an observation of reality. So it's not saying this is how reality should be, it's just saying this is how reality is. And just like with Einstein, so codifying the general theory of relativity into mathematics allows us to understand the world in a better way and allows us to do better things within the world. And in the same way, Adam Smith codifying theories like the division of labour into language allows us to better understand human interaction, which allows us to improve the world in that way. And that's why free market capitalism has been so successful, because it's about building a system that fits humans' natural inclinations, their natural behaviours, for the collective good. Because increases in productivity raise everyone's living standards, the wealthy, the poor, whatever. So it's important to just keep on banging the drum for capitalism and making it clear that it's not a dog-eat-dog world. It's not this crazy, awful theory. No, it's literally the best theory for raising everybody in the world. And ironically, achieving the utopia communists or ideologues claim they want.